This video is made possible with the help of my amazing patrons. From Elemental across the Spider-Verse and Nimona to Primo's Wish and Paw Patrol, it seems as though today art and animation for families and young audiences is all over the place. And in all, nowadays there seems to be more lows than highs. From the rise of AI art to people thinking that this scene from Kingdom Hearts was actually from Frozen, I feel like the art form of animation is in some sort of crisis. Though there have been a lot of good moments in family entertainment, I think that overall animation studios are showing more and more how little they care for the profession that they uphold. And it's no surprise that the Animation Guild is set to strike next year, as they should. Even companies like Disney are comfortable using AI in their advertisements when they're supposedly, at least in the US, the blueprint for artistic creativity and innovation. Or at least they've self-proclaimed that, only to continue to put profits first. But this is nothing new. From the 40s to the 90s to today, Disney has been very transparent that their main goal is to make money and that they're not on the side of workers. Walt Disney himself left the country during the 1940s animator strike. Disney's past CEO, Michael Eisner, who oversaw the Disney Renaissance, has famously said, "We have no obligation to make art, we have no obligation to make a statement, to make money is our only objective." And even as I write this, the current Disney CEO, Bob Iger, has said that the company intends to start to put quality before quantity, admitting that they've made mistakes. But still, it seems as though they've only gotten more greedy. Like, how could you put out an ad like this on Thanksgiving? Not to mention, a day later, Iger said, "Creators at Disney have lost sight of what their jobs should be. Entertain first, not messages." He adds that stories infused with positive messages for the world can be great, but that it shouldn't be their primary job. And it's not just Disney, but the landscape of children's entertainment in general. With the streaming model, there's more of an incentive to keep kids online and watching than ever before. From YouTube Kids to Netflix's autoplay and never-ending list of shows, the quantity is there, but what about the quality? As someone who's heavily invested in animation as an art form and who's looked up to the likes of Disney and Pixar since I was a kid and who does art myself and who now has a kid of my own, I thought I'd talk today about the current state of children and family animation, as well as reflect back on the animation that I grew up with and how lucky I was to have been able to see such a diverse range of animation styles for kids, especially at a time when computer-generated animation wasn't the norm. My main argument isn't that one era is better than the other, but rather that today there's a lack of diversity in animation styles for kids and why that's so detrimental, and how with the streaming model for kids, any incentive to make quality entertainment has gone out the window in favor of whatever will do best with the algorithm, whatever's the cheapest and fastest to produce, and how studios nowadays don't seem to trust children as much to pay attention and focus on a show with a slow-moving narrative, but rather want to play into the reward center of the brain, and thus they put the bells and whistles over substance because that'll make them the most money, sell the most toys, the most ads, etc. And before we start, let's just define some terms. When I say family entertainment, I primarily mean movies where the parents are usually along for the ride, while children's entertainment is primarily for children, and done in a TV format as parents don't need to be present, and usually put on a children's show to get a break or to do some housework. And for the sake of this video, we won't be diving into every age group when it comes to children's entertainment, but just notable examples, and we'll mainly be focusing on young children's TV, like ages 1 to 5, think Little Bear, Roly Poly Oly, Max and Ruby, Paw Patrol, and Cocomelon. But when it comes to movies, we'll be delving into family entertainment such as Disney and Pixar's latest animated films. I also want to reiterate that I'm not here to champion one time period over another because I see a lot of bad faith, mainly racist takes on how Pixar and Disney suck nowadays and use Wish and Turning Red as examples compared to movies like The Incredibles and Sleeping Beauty. And it's clear from the comments that they're just race baiting and trying to get outrage engagement. Not to mention that there still are amazing animations for kids and families out there. Shout out to Bluey and Elemental and the newest TMNT movie. And one last caveat, I do think that animation for tweens and teens and even adults are in a heyday right now. Like Tangled the series, Fiona and Cake, Nimona, Spider-Verse, Arcane, BoJack Horseman, Carmen Sandiego, She-Ra, Owl House, etc. are amazing. But again, when it comes to little kid entertainment and entertainment for the whole family, there seems to be a lack of care because it's just for kids, when that wasn't always the norm. And there was a time when Disney as a corporation and the person himself thought that animation as an art form could be so much more than just kid stuff, especially as a gateway for little kids to explore larger, more complex themes through fiction. And I feel under late-stage capitalism, with the help of streaming and recommendation algorithms, that that way of thinking is becoming lost. So without further ado, let's go. So my frame of reference for little kid animation is the late 90s and early 2000s, as I'm a zillennial, or a mix between a millennial and Gen Z. Too young for MySpace, but definitely had a Facebook, and I remember 9/11 and video rentals using CDs, record players, and rotary phones. And when I was growing up, like most kids born in 1995, I would basically spend my afternoons and Saturday mornings watching Disney Channel, Cartoon Network, and Nickelodeon. But as a little kid, like around 5 to 6 years old, Disney and PBS was what I watched. There was Sagwa, Roly Poly Oly, Charlie and Lola, Max and Ruby, JJ the Jet Plane, Little Bear, Thomas the Tank Engine, which was stop motion but is now animated, Franklin, Dragon Tale, Cyber Chase, Liberty's Kids, Wonder Pets, Chalk Zone, that was on Nick, Mickey Mouse Clubhouse, Winnie the Pooh, and more. And each show had their own unique style. Some were CG like Roly Poly Oly and Mickey Mouse Clubhouse, and of course this unholy abomination. You know, early CG animation could either be really smooth and unsettling in a playful way, or really realistic and unsettling in a nightmarish way. Except for Polar Express, which is a mix of both. But this was still the early 2000s when CG animation wasn't the norm, and we still had hand-painted backgrounds and 2D animation, and upon rewatching Little Bear, Franklin, and Winnie the Pooh, you can even see the watercolor texture paper in the background, and in a current world filled with CG garbage, it's honestly incredible. The Winter Solstice episode of Little Bear has lived in my head rent-free since I was 5, and for good reason. I honestly love Little Bear so much because of how slow it is, how it pauses and breaks during the animation, and lets us take in the environment. I feel like that's partially because it's meant to be like that, but also because of the nature of the medium of 2D animation. It's not perfect. There are human errors in the art, but that's what makes it endearing. The mistakes. Nowadays, CG animation for little kids, whether it be on YouTube with the likes of Cocomelon, a channel that has 168 billion views, and Masha and the Bear, a channel with 26 billion views, or the most uninspired, soulless excuse for a show, Paw Patrol on Paramount Plus, but on Netflix in Brazil, is made to maximize quantity and viewership rather than focusing on the art form. CG animation can look incredible, and I feel like there's still so much to be done with it, as its invention is relatively recent, but rather than trying to push any creative boundaries, studios are pumping out just the smoothest, most plastic-looking characters imaginable because it takes the least amount of effort and the easiest way for toys to stay on brand. I will say that in Paw Patrol, the movie, they do add fur to the dogs, unlike the series, but it's still the bare minimum. Even the newest My Little Pony characters look like Elsa, but a horse, while the 2D generation before had a unique style. What the studio heads at Disney, Nickelodeon, Netflix, and Moonbug and Treasure Studio, who own Cocomelon, want nowadays is to simply make money because who cares, right? It's just for little kids to give their parents a break, so let's put in zero to little effort and just capitalize on the fact that kids like bright colors and dogs. We don't need to have any quiet moments. What we really need are freeze frames of the toys for the kids to buy later. And this isn't to say that this money-grubbing aspect of little kids animation hasn't reared its ugly head before. I mean, have you heard of the Disney sequels from the 2000s? But rather that with the streaming TV and video model and rise in the ease of CG animation, there's a lot less of an incentive to create something with substance when you know that bright colors and dogs will bring in an audience and money no matter what the story is or how good the artwork is. I also think that Illumination's Despicable Me is to blame for this increase in low-budget plastic-looking CG animation for little kids as they popularized the Minions, which basically most of YouTube kid animations are based on. Not that that was Despicable Me's intention or the main takeaway from the first film, but in the end, the franchise made so much money that it would be insane not to capitalize on these little yellow pills' success. I was watching a Winnie the Pooh special from 1986, and the intro credits are so slow compared to today's fast-paced little kids entertainment. They show stills from Christopher Robin's bedroom, and they have like banter between the narrator and Pooh, and the episode itself is just a quiet little story about Pooh throwing pine cones in the water, and it's beautiful. And I'm not even a Winnie the Pooh fan, but it's done in a way that actually respects the target audience, little kids. It trusts that they'll appreciate and take in the environment and the music and the visuals, and it doesn't feel like they need to rush to the next action sequence because they think little kids are too dumb to pay attention. And it doesn't shamelessly shove merchandise in your face either. Today there's a general lack lack of respect when it comes to children's animation. Rather than try to talk to kids, more and more of it feels like it's talking down to kids. And I purely blame this on the streaming model. Nowadays, kids watch things online on YouTube and Netflix where whatever's the loudest and brightest will be what's clicked on, whatever has the most shocking thumbnail, the most engaging 30-second preview, and for slower cartoons like Little Bear and Winnie the Pooh, they just can't compete with Paw Patrol and Cocomelon. And because there's so much competition due to the fact that anyone with an internet connection and basic use of Blender can upload kids' entertainment, it reduces any chance for artistic value and creativity because profits need to come first, and to get profits, you need clicks. And since simple CG animation for little kids has done so well with so little substance, there's no need to go above and beyond. And though YouTube has tried to remedy this problem since Elsagate, where basically horrible money-grubbing adults hacked the algorithm by making extremely graphic content for kids, the problem is still there. Maybe it's not as graphic, but it's just the way the platform is set up, to keep kids addicted and online to maximize the bottom line, and thus it's impossible to really free the site of horrible or just crappy content for kids, whether it be soulless CG animation to obnoxious music, to parents exploiting their kids for views, to the lowest budget videos of adults playing with Play-Doh and slime. There's so much utter BS on YouTube Kids, it's overwhelming. My biggest tip as a parent when it comes to screen time is to delete YouTube from your TV and download videos on a flash drive for your kids to watch. That way they won't be exposed to the algorithm and their data won't be harvested by third parties. Kids can't consent to having their viewership habits and digital blueprint tracked and sold by corporations, so don't let it happen. Kids don't know when they're being advertised to versus when they're watching a show for entertainment. You need to put those boundaries in place for them. Another detrimental effect of streaming for kids is that kids don't watch the same shows anymore. With the streaming model and the rise of the internet, there's a lot less control and a lot more competition for your kids' attention. Like when I was a kid, we would all be subjected to the same programming on the same channel. At 6 a.m., there'd be Mickey Mouse Clubhouse, then at 6:30, Max and Ruby, and then when we got home from school, recess would be on at 3:30 p.m. and Hannah Montana at 7:30. And that would be my day. But nowadays, kids just open YouTube and Netflix and watch whatever, whenever, and thus the thumbnail and previews have to compete with each other all the time, 24/7 for your kids' attention, and that's not right. Again, it kills creativity to maximize engagement and is made to be purposefully addicting. Before the internet, we didn't have that, and I think that was a good thing. Of course, kids watching too much TV was always a big problem, but remember when, as a parent, all you had to worry about was your kid watching SpongeBob? Now you have to worry about if your kid's going to see Colleen Ballinger's racist Gangnam Style parody, or an animation of Elsa giving birth to Spider-Man's kid, or some family exploiting their own kid. Not to mention the TV couldn't follow you everywhere like it does now, which is another thing that I honestly really miss. Now with the internet and smart devices, it's inescapable. And I'm not here to shame iPad kids, but rather iPad parents who think that just because it's on YouTube Kids or Netflix Kids, it's fine and they don't need to monitor what their kids are watching. And even worse, in the end, a lot of these plastic soulless CG shows are overstimulating on purpose to boost engagement, but this leads to fatigue from kids who are only a couple of years in on this journey called life. In all, I just feel like there's so much less variety nowadays with the normalization of CG animation for little kids' TV, and I mourn the loss of hand-drawn and hand-painted animation. I feel like this problem is partly because it's just for kids, so who cares, partly because of how under capitalism profits come before people, and lastly because of Disney's monopoly and success with moving to CG animation and thus inadvertently popularizing it and totally phasing out 2D animation without much thought. Of course, Disney didn't pioneer CG animation. If anything, DreamWorks and Pixar really made that transition possible. But Disney has had the most monetary success from it, and seems to have perfected this big-eye baby protagonist style that just sells really well, and thus they haven't had any incentive to change it since. And because Disney is the largest entertainment monopoly and the largest child entertainment monopoly in history, everyone follows their lead and looks up to them, and thus we have mountains and mountains of dead-eyed CG models with the littlest thought put into them because as long as the animation looks like Disney, parents will trust them. The most successful non-Disney animation for little kids is definitely Canada's Paw Patrol. I also think YouTube's Masha and Bear is a high contender, but nowadays it's definitely Paw Patrol, which I hate with a passion. Not only is it propaganda, like the main dog Chase has a drone, that's totally normal, but it's devoid of any creativity and just capitalized off the fact that kids love dogs. There's this concept art of the dogs where they just look so sad. Like, they should have just scrapped it when they had the chance. When I was a kid, I'd watch K9 to 5 and other shows on Animal Planet about dogs, but Paw Patrol has just taken any educational value out of seeing real dogs and the slow pacedness of life and has made it into a sellable, conservative product like most kids shows and honestly family entertainment nowadays, but we'll get to that in the next section. Before I end this section, I do want to say that there are still great 2D animated shows for little kids, though they are few and far between. Animated shows for little kids like Bluey and Daniel Tiger are really endearing and well done, as well as quiet and slower paced. I'm personally really excited for Tiana's series, especially with how well tangled the series was done. So now on to the state of animated movies. So when I talk about family entertainment, I mean movies for the whole family, from kids aged 5 to adults. And when I talk about then, I'm talking about mainly CG animated movies from the early 2000s, specifically by Disney and Pixar, as that's my frame of reference. And during this time, most animated movies for kids would also be for adults with adult or at least young adult protagonists. Think The Incredibles, Shark Tale, Ratatouille, Megamind, Madagascar, Shrek, Toy Story, but also 2D animated movies like Pocahontas, Mulan, The Hunchback of Notre Dame, The Lion King, and Hercules. And these movies not only had young adults in lead roles, but also adult humor, which isn't really my thing, but hey, like honestly, when I heard about like the thong Shrek joke, I thought that was like a lie, like how could they put that in a movie? But they did. But most importantly, these films included mature themes that would not only add to later rewatch value for the kids when they grew up, but also showed that the studios trusted the kids in the audience with heavier material. For example, Disney's Hunchback of Notre Dame had some tonal issues, but the adult stuff was very adult and something that most kids wouldn't get at the time, but would get later as they grew older, and that added to a deeper appreciation of the film. Not to mention that Disney also trusted audience members of all ages with these themes, showing that they respected them. The same for the themes in The Lion King and Beauty and the Beast, and even much older works like Bambi, Pinocchio, and Fantasia. Themes like death, the ignorance of a small provincial town, and fetishization were explored because even though the kids might not get it, eventually they will. And also, there's a first time for everything, and fiction and the animation medium is a great way to explore more complex themes for kids. Nowadays, Disney and Pixar still make movies with adult protagonists like Elemental, Zootopia, Soul, and even Cars, but in the past decade, there's been a definite shift to focusing on younger protagonists who are either in their mid-teens or straight-up children. For example, for Pixar, up until Brave in 2012, all the protagonists were adults, with children only being supporting characters. Even in Finding Nemo, Nemo is the only child main character in the entire film, and the main characters are actually Marlin and Dory. Since Brave, Monsters University, Inside Out, The Good Dinosaur, Coco, Incredibles 2, Onward, Luca, and Turning Red, 9 out of their last 14 films have centered children protagonists, thus lessening the amount of adult themes the movies can explore. And I want to make it clear here that I don't think having movies centered on child protagonists is a bad thing, but it definitely makes family entertainment feel more like kids' entertainment, when in the past these movies could be enjoyed by adults and children. Even in movies that take place in a more adult setting, like Monsters University, a lot of what could happen on a college campus is toned down. That doesn't make the movie bad per se, and it's not bad in the slightest, but it just makes it more childish. And childish, again, doesn't mean bad, but it does limit what can be explored and the general tone of a film. Also, in my opinion, reduces animation further to just kid stuff when the medium is so much more than that. Inside Out, which takes place in Riley's head, though has adult protagonists, is also limited in that they can only explore life through a child's eyes, which, though impactful, also again is geared more towards children and less towards families. The Good Dinosaur and Coco, along with Incredibles 2, also center the children as the main heroes. And Onward, honestly, I don't even care about it. That's how forgettable it was. As for Luca and Turning Red, they're most child-centered films yet, though delve into adult trauma and even more importantly generational trauma, along with Elemental, are still very much for kids. And even their more adult movies like Lightyear are just kind of meh because it's supposed to be a kids movie that inspired the toy. And to reiterate, it's not that these movies are bad and shouldn't exist, because they very much should exist, but just that I wish there was more variety. I don't want to come off as an entitled adult who wants everything catered to me, like animated movies for kids and solely for kids should exist, but I also don't think it has to be one or the other. We can have more childish films like Trolls and Minions and Incredibles 2, but also reinforce that animation as a medium doesn't just have to be for children, but for everyone. As for Disney animation specifically, I feel like since Atlantis: The Lost Empire, they've skewed much younger, especially with Home on the Range and Chicken Little, which honestly I loved as a kid, but they also had some really mature movies like Meet the Robinsons, which in my opinion is so underrated. Though Zootopia focuses on adults, I feel like the race allegory is so confusing, but I also do think that in general it was impactful and I at least remember it. As for their latest movies like Raya and the Last Dragon, I found that to be so forgettable. But Encanto, which does skew younger, I think is one of the best films they've produced in a while because it truly felt like a family film. Kind of like Coco in that it was able to balance the adult and childish moments perfectly. In Encanto, we were able to get the grandmother's backstory of sacrifice and hardship that again isn't only for the adults in the room, but for the kids. Not to mention intergenerational trauma and family dynamics. I also think that Luca and Turning Red were good, but still not on my top 5 Pixar movie list. But I am still excited for those younger skewing Pixar films, and I hope that Elio is good. I also thought Elemental was pretty impactful, though again, still pretty childish. So when it comes to Disney family entertainment as far as stories and characters in the past, it seems as though animation was for the whole family, specifically for adults, and proved that the medium was for all ages, whereas nowadays it's skewing much younger. As for the animation style, all of Disney's latest animated films have been done in a CG style rather than 2D. The Princess and the Frog from 2009 was Disney's last 2D animated film done in Flash. After Tangled came out to a good amount of success and then Frozen made $1 billion, it was a no-brainer for the executives to make the switch to computer-generated animation. In addition, these films cemented the Disney CG style we know today. The big-eyed baby protagonist with small bodies. And this style is particularly reserved for the main female protagonists, who though are getting some body diversity with the likes of Moana and Mirabel, along with the older female characters than Luisa from Encanto, are for the most part thin with bobble heads on top. I can't even get into how they were able to give this baby face treatment to Sisu the dragon, seriously? And though Disney has always followed this baby type character design for their young adult female protagonist, I feel like under the new CG model, it's become so extreme and honestly hard to look at. In addition, all of these movies look the same and have a hard time setting themselves apart style-wise. Tangled, Frozen, Moana, Raya and the Last Dragon, and Encanto look like they could all be in the same universe. And though that's fine, I guess, it really doesn't explore any depth to CG animation. With their 2D films, there was a clear design difference between Hercules and Lady and the Tramp and Hunchback and Mulan. They don't look like the same recycled universes. Hercules was more angular, Lady and the Tramp was more painterly, Sleeping Beauty was done in a tapestry style, while 101 Dalmatians utilized xerography. And though done to cut costs, gives the movie a unique feel and environment. Since the CG models were introduced, all of the worlds and characters look the same. Aside from some musical numbers like Moana's tapestries from You're Welcome, the CG medium has gone largely unexplored by Disney. And I get it, Frozen made $1 billion and then some. If it's not broken, don't fix it. On the other hand, you're a $1 billion media monopoly with tons of resources and claim to be an innovator of animation and storytelling, so prove it then. But when it comes to Pixar, they do at least seem to be experimenting with their CG models. Luca and Turning Red have been dubbed by some, mainly haters, as fitting into the dreaded Cal art style, which is characterized by roundedness and big teeth. And honestly, it's not my cup of tea, it's not my style, I don't really like it, but I also think it's fine and the right art style to tell these stories in. Luca specifically looks like they took inspiration from figurines like Naughty, which I think is really cute and works well for the story. Turning Red pushed the envelope and didn't go for the cutesy babyface Disney route, and I applaud them for it. Finally, we're seeing some diversity in the art style, and it may not be everyone's, again, cup of tea, but that doesn't mean it's bad or not worth taking that risk. A lot of people hate this art style, and it's used in a lot of reels on Instagram like Pixar or Disney then versus now in order to spark outrage and race bait. But again, I'm happy that the artists behind Turning Red didn't cater to the men in the room who constantly want to keep their female protagonists in this thin bobble-headed mold. But that's Pixar. Within Disney animation, it's clear that they have been risk-averse when it comes to breaking out of their safe CG character molds they created over a decade ago. And this brings me to to the Wish animation discourse. Wish is the newest original Disney princess animated film and actually is trying to push the boundaries of the CG animated Disney style by being more painterly and storybook-like. And honestly, I'm here for anything that looks different from what we've been getting the past 10 years. Some people say that it looks cheap and lazy, like they just put the film through a filter, while others like me are excited for something different. I do think that it could have been pushed further, but it's a start. There was also a problem with the trailer in that you had to watch it in 4K in order to see the true depth of the animation, so a lot of people who were watching it in standard definition didn't get the full impact. Overall, again, I'm excited to see Wish solely for the animation style. Not to mention, Asha will be the second Black Disney princess, which is huge. Though of course there's a lot of bad faith criticism saying that Wish could never be as good as old Disney simply because the main character Asha is Black, and that's a lot of racist nonsense. As for the story, Wish is bringing back Disney villains. Though I think the latest Disney and Pixar films that deal more with family trauma are really important, especially when the parents need to change and grow and see their mistakes. I also think that sometimes having villains that are just evil are important, and they've been missing from Disney movies. And you can't have both. Like in The Little Mermaid, the dad has to realize he was wrong, and Ursula is still there as a villain and is amazing. Not to mention that I'm a little tired of the family coming together neatly at the end, because though aspirational and not everything has to be realistic, I love to see an ending where the adult and kid just can't reconcile, and I feel like Disney will just never do that. I also think that taking out villains and making every movie about, family or just having like a twist antagonist is an easy way out of not having to explore societal taboos and evil. It's a less controversial and more conservative message to say family is important. Though it is new to show parents and adult figures being wrong and needing to change and apologize, even though it was there in The Little Mermaid, it's almost always a two-sided thing where they both need to understand each other more. Both parties need to apologize and grow, when sometimes it's just the older person who needs to own up to their mistakes. I think that's why I loved Mother Gothel from Rapunzel so much, because it showed how parents can be purely evil and sometimes can't change. Since Frozen, having family be the center of each movie and the conflict revolving around the family unit and the message being about how important family is, it's just kind of tiring to me, sorry. Especially when they don't throw in a fun villain like Ursula or even Mother Gothel. Like, it's not mutually exclusive. You can have movies about multi-generational trauma and also include villains that explore evil. I feel like another reason why Disney villains have gone extinct is because of the rise in the popularity of twist villains. Again, pioneered in the modern Disney era by Frozen. It was in Zootopia, Coco, Moana, Frozen 2, etc., and that makes for a surprise reveal and kind of a good mystery. It doesn't really give any time to delve into more adult themes that villains tend to bring up, and again, I think that's by design. Modern Disney doesn't want to have villains in their movies because not only is it safer to just push the message of family, they also don't know how to reconcile the fact that most of their villains in the past have been designed physically in an unforgiving light, and thus don't know how to design them today in a way that won't offend. They're afraid of being seen as regressive, they're afraid of taking risks, and thus they make their family-centered movies all about families, filial piety, child protagonists, and do away with any villain because they for some reason don't know how to make a villain that isn't also drawn as a racist caricature. But they do though, Claude Frollo is right there. Did you forget about him? Another reason why Disney villains have petered out is because of how Disney perceives the left as a right-leaning company. For example, in their live-action Pinocchio, the kids can't drink beer and smoke because in today's world, where our morality for some reason is tied to the entertainment we like, we can't display anything potentially problematic without being called problematic ourselves, or at least that's how the right thinks the left thinks. In reality, just because a movie or character might be evil and we like them doesn't make us evil. Ursula is awesome and we love her, but that doesn't mean we endorse stealing people's souls. Fiction and the animation medium is a wonderful place to explore darker themes and life's complexities, as seen in older Disney works. But Disney today, a multi-billion-dollar conglomerate with nothing to lose, can't see past their bottom line, and thus here are more movies about how family is so important. FYI, having evil stuff in your film doesn't make you as a company bad, and liking evil characters doesn't make you as an audience member morally corrupt. corrupt. We need to stop giving into this bad faith idea that your morality is tied to how moral the entertainment you consume is, because fiction doesn't exist as a barometer for your own morality. It exists as an escape, as entertainment, as a way to explore things you wouldn't otherwise want to or be able to in real life, and that's okay. That's what fairy tales are for, and that's what Disney has forgotten. So overall, I'm excited to see this villain in Wish. I did see that in the visual development of the film, the villain could have been a couple, and that would have been awesome. I also saw people online bring up how the star in Wish during development could have been a magical star boy who could have had a romance with Asha, but that was scrapped to a lot of people's dismay, mine included. The change of true love's kiss to a familial one started with Frozen and Maleficent, but nowadays the girls just don't have love interests anymore because #girlboss. Is this what feminism is? Like, let the girls have love interest again, and also let them not be straight. Honestly, I would have been so hyped for a villain couple in Wish and Asha falling in love with a star boy, but I guess that just doesn't jive with Disney's girl boss version of feminism, or with their risk-averse strategy where they're even afraid to give love interests to their female characters. Like, now even romance is seen as taboo by Disney because we can't show girls in love, I guess. Honestly, thank God for turning red. In general, I just wish billion-dollar conglomerates like Disney weren't afraid of experimenting, because they really have no reason to be. They've hoarded so much wealth and resources and talent that they should be the innovators and the dreamers that they pride themselves to be, but instead are scared of giving out free Disney passes to one of their prize writers. Like, what the fuck? In general, I do think there's something amiss these days when it comes to entertainment for little kids and families. I just think we need more slower-paced, low-stimulating cartoons that are free from the mercy of the algorithm, and I also think that family entertainment needs to diversify again and show that animation can be for everyone, adults and kids. I'm specifically talking about Disney and Pixar, and that studios need to start treating kids with respect and stop being so afraid to rock the boat, especially when they're the self-proclaimed blueprint. It isn't a question of one era being better than the other, but rather a respect for the medium and the audience that got lost in the shuffle when studios and executives realized that they could just cut corners and do the same thing over and over and over again and think that they could just get away with it. But we're here to let them know they can't get away with it. So stand with animators, writers, artists, and actors who are the backbone to this entire industry. So that's it for this one. I hope you enjoyed it, and let me know what you think about the current state of animation in the year of our Lord 2023. Do you agree that family movies skew younger these days? Do you miss 2D animation? Do you miss family movies that are more adult? Let me know below, and I'll see you in next year. Bye, and thank you again for watching.